Hi everybody. Let me read something from D.H. Lawrence at the beginning of our little chat. And if tonight my soul may find her peace in sleep and sink in good oblivion, and in the morning wake like a new opened flower, then I have been dipped again in God and new created. I wanted to read you that as a kind of reminder that we are not alone. And as I'm going to talk to you a bit about the coronavirus and our reaction or response to it and my thought about it, I want to share with you a few things to give you an insight and maybe put it in a serious and yet a more realistic way and lighter way as well, that there is nothing one-dimensional or nothing flat, and there are many ways, and what it seems may not what it is. So let's start with our approach to it, especially if we have a few things which bother us. For instance, if we are compulsive obsessive, we may go into override. We may go and wash everything completely and utterly obsessively. We may use all sorts of things to wash the fruits and wash the hands and wash the beds and wash the husbands and dogs and tables and chairs, because we are compulsive obsessive. So we need to remember that the danger which comes from virus is real, but the danger which comes from inside us is equally real. And it all depends how we handle it. So we don't have to handle it just outside reality. We above all have to handle the inner reality. Because as Nietzsche would put it, don't worry about the enemy which is outside you. Pay attention to the one which sits on your chair. So you see, we have to pay attention because we are called now to some reflection and maybe a bit of more sobriety. And sobriety is a complex thing. Sobriety can be, physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional, it could be spiritual, it could be social. So these times, special times as we are told, are special. The government uses the words war. Very serious word. Why is the war? What is happening? So we need to be sober. We need to look at it in a sober way and possibly, just possibly, come to comprehension that without our inner base, which is the most important in this situation of our handling the special times, is of essence. So if we're prone to a bit of a hysteria or histrionics, we deal with it as we always do. We'll want to dive under the duvet or yell and scream. So we need to maybe pay attention to our nears and dears and not burden them with that, because they will have more than enough to do. If we have a complex relationship between husband and wife, that also will be tasking for us, because the children between us will be affected. That's the psychology of energy. So there's an invitation for growth, an invitation for reflection, an invitation for trust, invitation to see how we, on the national level, deal with this crisis, but also how we deal with this crisis at the personal level, individual level, because our stand on it would help the society. And there's no point to fight, and be rebellious, because rebelliousness is really asymptomatic for children. And as Carl Jung once said, it's a pity that world is populated by children and there are not enough adults. So maybe, just maybe, this is an invitation to grow up a bit, because being children would not help us. And that is not useful because children would need our attention. So if grown-ups embodied are childish, then that might be a bit too much in the family. We need to also remember to see the difference between reaction and response. It's an interesting word, to react and to respond. Both begins with R, but there's such a different outcome to it. You know, if we react, that means that we are might go into trauma. And especially very traumatized people would go into overpowering emotional response would be not useful, because that would not be response, that would be just reaction. Reaction is connected to the functions of our nervous system. We can either fight or fly or play dead. It would be overwhelming for us and would not be useful. So we need to help one another to see how to respond to this situation and how to respond to being lonely. Loneliness kills, you see. So maybe the isolator needs to think to be more active and not wait passively if somebody phones them, but to phone a few people. It's difficult for isolator to do that, because by the temperament and nature of that condition, they're very passive internally and emotionally. So maybe, just maybe, it would be an invitation for isolator to do exactly the opposite and not wait for people to save them or to phone them, but to phone people whom they never did phone, or to phone people they never thought that they may need them. For isolators feel most of the time desperately sorry for themselves. Then you can be victim in all sorts of ways. A victim of your own isolation, or victim of your own temperament, or victim of your own PTSD, or victim of your own anger. And anger is not useful, and fear is even less useful. Because you see, fear is not a good boss. No point to be frightened. Every day we spend frightened is a lost day. And it will freeze us. It would make us completely and utterly not able to respond. And fear is common trauma response. So we have to help one another. We need to really also remember to use sense of humor. Not sense of humor about the virus, which is dodgy virus anyhow. You know, if the government expects us to sacrifice ourselves so much, so we have a right, in a sense, as citizens, to expect government to inform us well. And somehow we need to remember that this information we're having may be just not the all information we have. And we need to be open. Go and listen to good doctors or read. At least when we rest, we can read and inform ourselves what is going on really. Why the government used the word war? It's a serious word, isn't it? It takes a courage to be in the war. What's going on? What's the difference between this virus and many other viruses? There were a few other situations which were slightly more dangerous. Is this virus a special virus or just an any virus? Okay, so remember that we also have a right to ask the questions. We are not sheep. We are people who have a right to take care of our bodies and our minds and our emotions, but we also have a right to the truth. And remember that the truth is a situation which hardly ever is possible in the politics or banking or, you know, big boys telling us what to do. And remember that truth is not what it seemed to be. The truth is what is. It's like a book, you know. You don't judge the book by its cover. So the more we are centered, the more we are concentrate on being sober mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the more we will be able to assess the truth and be informed so we can act accordingly. It's important, of course, it's important to help each other so we're not burdening the government and hospitals, and pray for all these people who are taking care of it. But what else is going on? Each of us have a freedom to ask that question and seek the answer so we can be armed with the truth. The truth is expensive commodity and rare, and so is consciousness. As Carl Jung once put it, the consciousness is worth its weight in gold. So can we become more alert and more conscious? Do not go into a hysterical answer. And you know, the psychology of group is such that we edge each other on. Remember, if you have children, that if one child starts squeaking, a few others are screaming and crying. That's an energetic and emotional situation. And the same with us. So we must not go into any overrun and overwhelmed, because it's very easy to go into overwhelm. Many people already tell me that they spooked by the silence, because you see, we are so addicted to noise. We perpetually want to be noisy. We perpetually want to be busy. We perpetually want to be doing something. And here it is, we are locked up and we are called to stay put. That's very difficult for someone who is not in a position, workaholics, busyholics. What would happen to us all? It's a phenomenal invitation for reflection. Reflect, reflect, reflect. Maybe for communication, which never happened. You know, the husbands who were perpetually out of the home. The children who are not used to having fathers around. It will be very strange. The wives who would not know how to involve the husband in running the show because they are so used to running it on their own. There's enormous multidimensional complexity which is involved in this situation. So this virus, dangerous? Question is, why is it so dangerous? The millions of viruses are going every year through our systems and bodies. What's making it so dangerous? That's a good question. Maybe we need to find the answer. And that crises are always invitation. We have a choice to make it either invitation or cares. Let's try it to look at it as invitation. And now, let's remember that we have all higher power, the spiritual dimension, which always helps us in diversity, in a situation which makes it worse if we don't have it. So we need to remember to pray, to meditate, to reflect. And maybe that's the time to say serenity prayer. So let's pray. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Bye for now.